now. We the talk around town. Alex threw the ball to Smokey for a touchdown. It's fourth down and you don't really want no more. We've been winning from the door. You should check the scoreboard. Check the scoreboard.
Welcome to week 2 of the USFL. We have some insight. Last week we did the show mostly blind, and today we finally have the first batch of information delivered about the teams, what we've been looking for. And going into week 2, we have some pretty tough decisions to make because we have the losing teams facing each other, the winning teams also playing against each other. So should be some tough picks. First of all, Smokey, how you doing?
Man, not bad. I actually enjoyed this weekend of football. I guess it's something to adapt to, knowing that there's only 4 games that's going to be played. But we did get a Monday night game, which kind of made it feel a little more like the NFL to me. It almost feels like a cross between college football and the NFL. It's like there's this median here. And, I think the game shook out pretty good. One thing I will say is their attendance is not great outside of the Stallions and the Generals. Like, there seemed to be everybody there and then nobody at the other games, at least from the viewpoint of the TV. Did you notice the sound in some of these games? It wasn't in all of the games, but some of the games it's almost like they're mic'd up a little too much and you hear like every clink and clank of the helmets, and yeah, hopefully they'll fix that in the weeks to come. But other than that, I thought it was a good weekend.
I think so. I like the idea of having more player sounds, more field sounds involved. I think that's a good idea. I also like the camera work. I like it was irritating a little bit at the start, the little drone they got flying around behind the play and everything. Yeah. You can hear it, and you can see it always like it looks like there's something like on the field all the time from the angle that the camera's pointing. There's like so gliding around the grass. They're flying a little drone around the field, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. Attendance spotty, which is kind of to be expected, I guess. Of course, the Generals historic franchise, in that sense they should have some fan base, and they're playing in Birmingham, so the Stallions should have a bigger fan base. But I think it was a promising week. I think it was certainly a better start than the AAF had. Remember, they had the weird camera experiment where they would film the field like in a vertical camera perspective behind the offense, which is terrible. And the XFL had their whole own set of problems, but I think it's a good start. Now, in terms of football, of course, it's not NFL quality. We knew it wasn't going to be for several reasons. The talent is one thing, but also just the preparation time. And I think a lot of what we saw, some of these key things that we saw speak for themselves. We saw 5 out of 8 teams start 2 quarterbacks.
Yes.
Like swap between 2 quarterbacks, which just that tells you a whole story. They haven't figured anything out. Remember, these teams were drafted together less than 2 months ago, so they've really had not much time at all to work this out, and we didn't see a lot of convincing quarterback play either, which is also to be expected, because the offense generally tends to need a little bit more time to adapt, to get stuff right, and especially for quarterbacks to develop a rhythm, develop a timing, operating in the offense with the personnel they have and with the scheme they have. It's all very early, and it looked a lot like what preseason usually looks like. The games look like NFL preseason. This is what it felt like. A lot of people got some playing time. A lot of quarterback rotation happened. Majority of teams played both of their quarterbacks. It's very early, but I think it is relatively promising. So I do like the direction it's going. I didn't really expect, or we couldn't really expect any more from week 1, I would say.
Yeah. I agree totally. One thing I will point out, though, I think at some point in time that drone is going to hit a player.
For sure.
It's going to happen.
They'll hit someone, a ref or a player.
Yeah,
it has to happen, right? I don't know who operates it, but it's hard, especially when you get like a trick play. What would be really funny if it got knocked down by a pass or something.
Oh yeah.
The way it looked like they rush it up the field. If they had like a fake draw or something and a bubble screen, you could hit the drone for sure. If that got knocked out of the air a couple times, that might start becoming expensive. But so far, no drone accidents. So going into week 2, like I said, we already have the 2 losing teams, the 2 winning teams playing against each other. We're starting off with the Michigan Panthers at the Generals.
Yeah, and you're saying these are 2 losing teams, but the Generals actually looked really good in their loss. Now, I'll start with the Panthers. Shea, Patterson, Paxton, Lynch, like you said, a lot of these teams were switching off quarterbacks trying to figure out who's going to be, set them up to win. Shea Patterson was better than Paxton Lynch, which was surprising because he's had the NFL experience. And, he was actually a starter in the NFL. Shea Patterson was a decent quarterback at Michigan, but never really lived up to what he should have. Everybody wants to compare players coming out of Michigan, especially quarterbacks, to Tom Brady. And Shea Patterson was never that guy. He really didn't get picked up in the NFL. I think he was an undrafted free agent for, Kansas City or something. But, never quite lived up to it. But, in fact, he seems to be better, at least with this team, than Paxton Lynch. Stevie Scott was decent at running back. I do like Lance Lenore, that receiver that caught the touchdown pass. On the other side, I tell you what, I'm impressed by Luis Perez. I know they were switching out with DeAndre Johnson, and DeAndre Johnson was more the running quarterback. But Luis Perez is like this gunslinger. He seems like he's got something going on. And I know he underthrew kind of an underthrow for the very first play, but he had the balls to go for it. And it looked really good. Randy Satterfield was out there, made the play. I think these Generals are going to be good, given what happened in the first week. It was a really close game. And I am going to go with the Generals here to beat a kind of bad Panthers.
Yeah, I will agree with you there. Generals scored more points than any other winning team, except for Birmingham, where they obviously played. And Luis Perez was probably the most impressive quarterback out of all 8 that we've seen. Of course, you said they also were swapping between the running and the passing quarterback. But Luis Perez, I don't care much about quarterback rating, but what I'm looking at here, they show QBR 132.4. I mean, that is elite. That is super elite. Now, I'm not a fan of QBR as a rating, but that is an indication of a pretty strong passer rating as well. And they were in to win the game until the very last second. Remember, it was the defense that ended up losing the game for the Generals, giving up the last second touchdown drive. So the offense quite impressive. They also dominated that game on the ground. I think they were the better team for most of it, which is not so intuitive because they lost, but they had a better run game. I think they won the time of possession battle. Their offense seemed more consistent, and they just ended up making the last mistake, and the Stallions came away with a clutch final drive, which I also have something to say about because even there, and I was really high on Alex McGough, they also went with 2 quarterbacks, so they're still not really set going either way. And McGough drew that one really bad interception, but other than that, I think we saw pretty solid performance from both of them. As for this game, and we talked about Michigan briefly, 2 very different sides of a coin in terms of loss. Now, I agree with Shea Patterson, probably the starter or the favorite to be the starter going forward, because Paxton Lynch came in, looked god-awful, Nathan Peterman level. Not something you want to mess with anymore if you absolutely have to. So I think Shea Patterson is probably the safer bet, and he was the first overall pick, so he better be. You don't want to. It's going to be hard to bench him, fan favorite that he already is in Michigan, for a quote unquote failed NFL quarterback who was a high pick, by the way, in the NFL draft. Never found his footing, and now doesn't seem to be able to do it at USFL either. So not as great of a loss, if there is such a thing, as the Generals. They looked a lot more impressive, and they had every right to win the game. Didn't come out of it as the winner, but I think they should be the favorites going into this. So that's sticking with my preseason idea. Generals generally being one of the better teams. Panthers definitely not. So I'll take the Generals to win it as well. And as for the point you made about attendance, or it felt weird because there was only 4 games. I think to a degree that's correct, and you have to get used to a smaller league. But in terms of actual TV airtime, it's not that far off the NFL, because all these games, no 2 of them are overlapping. So you still have 4 TV slots. When in the NFL, you get 5. It's not that big of a difference in terms of actual airtime. So I think that's actually quite a nice touch. Now, of course, they're all of them playing at the same stadium. They have to do it that way, but you do get exposure that way, right? You do get a lot of football on TV. Make sure everyone sees every game. So I do like that. Generals to win the first one. I agree with you on that. Next, we got the Pittsburgh Maulers at the Philadelphia Stars.
I'll tell you, the Pittsburgh Maulers are awful. I am already chalking them up, at least for right now. I guess they could turn it around, but the Maulers are the worst team in the USFL at this point. Kyle Lauletta was bad. Jeffrey Thomas was bad. I don't even think they could figure out which running back they wanted to go with in this game. What was it? Grayshack and Josh Love, which came in and he and almost was one of their best running backs in the end, which is not saying much. And they threw London in there a few times. They have not got this running game figured out. They haven't got the passing game figured out. On the other side, the Philly Stars were a losing team also. That was really, well, I can't say really, really good, but they were good enough, and they're definitely better than the Maulers, in my opinion. Byron Scott, I keep saying Byron. I said that last week also, but it's Brian Scott. Chris Rowland was out there catching some passes, and Darnell Holland looks to be a promising running back. I think these guys are putting something together, and I think they're going to win quite a few games this year in the end. So I am going to go with the Philly Stars to maul the Maulers.
I think, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I think we have a similar situation as with the other game as well. You have two different types of losses, right? You mentioned Pittsburgh did not look good, didn't look like they got the quarterback situation figured out, and you talked about the run game. I like sticking with the run game, but eventually it has to work. 32 attempts for less than 90 total yards is not enough, and you said the quarterback actually had, Josh Love, the highest yard per average per carry, so not something you love to see. You also not really figured out who your starter is going to be. Maybe Josh Love, is that Kyle Lauletta did not look good at all. 20% completion percentage, not what you want to see. On the other hand, and they scored 3 points overall, by the way, so completely impotent offense at this point in time. For the Stars, lost by a score to what is actually a really, really strong rushing attack in the Breakers. They 170 yards on the ground. They were dominant in their rushing attack, and still they managed to stick with them decently well. I think they have their situation figured out at quarterback for the most part. Didn't do well in the rushing offense either, but I think they have solid enough pieces on defense, and they're probably further along with the team chemistry building and the individual experience too, where it matters. So I do agree with you. I'll take the Stars as well. And Pittsburgh, they need to get the offense rolling. That's really what it is. Who's the quarterback? And I think Josh Love at this point probably has the higher potential as more of a dual threat kind of guy. But can you work him into it, and can you put points on the board? That's what it's going to come down to. So Stars for me as well. I agree with you on that. We have the Stallions at the Houston Gamblers.
Yeah, this team seemed to be the best team in the USFL. Birmingham Stallions, that was a great game. We've already talked about it, but Jamar Smith coming in there Alice McGo was injured, but when Jamar Smith came in, he seemed to be completely capable of running this. Osiris Mitchell out there catching passes. It was a really good team. There's no doubt about that. And you would think maybe they're going to take a step back. But I think Jamar Smith, who, by the way, a fun fact, he hasn't really played football since 2019. But he came in and did really well. And I think he's completely capable of carrying this team. If Alex McGo, have you heard, is Alex McGo going to play? Or is it capable of playing? Or
I have no clear indication yet for this weekend, so we don't know.
All right, but on the other side, the Gamblers, Clayton Thorson was benched at one point in this game. I mean, it's not unusual because we saw all the other teams that had to do that also. Guy to watch, though, is Isaiah Zuber. This guy looks really good. Dylan Dawkins at running back looks good. And I also wanted to point out that my personal favorite tight end in this entire league is Isaiah Likely because of the meme Likely 4 from Coastal Carolina. It's really fun to watch him pop up in this league just because of the meme. But in the end, I have to go with the Birmingham Stallions to whop the Gamblers.
It's tougher for me to pick than I necessarily want to say. Also, by the way, these are the two teams that I'm currently still debating between which team I'm going to support, which I'm going to ask you later as well. What team are you actually going to give your fandom to? These are the two finalists for me, so I'm debating between these two. The Gamblers, because I like their uniforms the best. They were the most creative. And at Birmingham, part because of Alex Magoo, part also because the opening game was great. It was a blast. 28-24, exactly how you want to start into a season like that. So I was impressed, I will say, with both of these teams. I was worried about the Stallions without Alex Magoo because I thought that was going to be, the big name who I had as a very underrated player coming into the league. But it seemed like it seemed perfectly fine even after he went out. Jamar Smith did perfectly fine, and I think they're in good hands there either way if Magoo is not able to play. So I'm not too worried in that direction. What I'm worried about a little bit is the defense, especially the pass defense against the deep ball. At least the Gamblers did a pretty good job at in their week 1 game. So maybe a slight mismatch coming up there. Then again, if you're Birmingham Stallions, you would probably have the fastest receiving core in the league, so you also want to start developing that game, the deep ball game. Take advantage of the sort of inexperienced secondaries that you're going to be running into. Victor Bolden is a huge playmaker as a kick returner as well as a receiver now. He's got incredible speed, might be the fastest guy in the league. Take advantage of those weapons, and I think they're probably the better roster. Ahmad Goodin is a player I want to point out for the Houston Gamblers who had a monster game on defense. That pass rush is looking like a serious business, and you probably don't want any part of that, and that could play a role when we're talking about the deep passing game and slowly developing concepts down the field. But he had a great game with 2 sacks. And I think he'll make an impact as well. If this comes to be a shootout with lots of passing, it's going to be a close one. I'll take the Stallions as well because I like how solid the quarterback position is looking. That's usually a sign of a good team, the solid organization. I will take them, but I think this is going to be a very close one. I think this could really go either way. Gamblers have great defense. Stallions have a great offense from what we've seen so far. I'm going to take Birmingham, but not by much. And lastly, we have the Breakers at the Bandits.
Yeah, I really expected more out of Jordan Ta'amu. Now, I don't think he was horrible by any means, but he has to watch those interceptions. All in all, they rolled over a really bad team, whereas the Breakers also, well, the Breakers actually won over a decent Philly Stars, in my opinion. I really like the Philly Stars. I don't know if I'm going to pick them for my team yet, but I'm debating. Kyle Sloter, not great, but at least he is one that finished the game, which is not every quarterback can't say that. I guess both of these guys did, Ta'amu and Sloter, yeah. Jordan was out there throwing to Lastly, and I forget his first name, but BJ Emmons is another good running back to watch in this league. I really like BJ Emmons so far. Jordan Ellis on the other side, I don't know, I guess it's up in the air. It wasn't just the greatest night. He did have a touchdown though, so take of that what you will. I think if Jordan Ta'amu can get these interceptions under control, they should win this game. So I will take the Tampa Bay Bandits.
So this is the one that's also tough for me to debate. I was kind of hoping we would disagree on one because so far we're 7 out of 7 picking the same team. I thought you would pick Philly here because of the not so impressive wins. You very much don't like Pittsburgh. And I hope we had a disagreement there. I'm going to stick with Tampa Bay 100%. Right. Jordan Ta'amu was still the best quarterback in the league to me at this point, in my opinion, with the experience. I know he threw 2 interceptions, but fundamentally still solid, played the whole game, orchestrated the offense well. There is some running threat there to be looked out for, which is a really good thing to have as well. Solid offensive line. They can run the ball, not necessarily too successfully in this game, though. That didn't have to be because the pass was working and they hit him over the top a couple times, and it was fine. I think, like you said, he turns off the interceptions. He's probably the biggest or the highest upside quarterback in the league, and the Bandits are going to be hard to beat when that happens. Not necessarily the biggest challenge in Pittsburgh, and this is going to be a much bigger one. Stars played well. I'm just not as convinced about Kyle Sloter. That's really the reason that I'm picking Tampa Bay, because it comes down to the quarterback battle. My money's on Jordan Ta'amu more so because, number one, I've seen him play a full season of professional football with the Battlehawks, and he was possibly the best or a top 2 quarterback in that league, which earned him the spot in the NFL as a backup, which he could still be in right now if he didn't want to start in the USFL. Better track record, so my trust, especially in the early stages where teams are figuring stuff out, stays with the team with the more experienced quarterback. So to me, the Tampa Bay Bandits, I almost said the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Bandits are gonna win the game, and we agree on all 4 yet again.
Yes.
But maybe that will change coming into next week, because we'll have some mix-ups as well. So the Stars are currently your favorite to be your favorite.
They're up there. I'm looking over them. I wanted to like the Maulers, but after the first week, oh my god, I can't like them. I don't know. I mean, that is a franchise there that was pretty decent in the original. I know they had a fan base. I was actually talking to a friend in Pittsburgh, and I was like, so the Maulers got killed last night. And she was like, oh, that team is still around? I was like, well, kinda.
Again.
I think, man, maybe it's just Pennsylvania or something, man. But usually a Houston team would come out with a really good quarterback that I would like or something like that. But I think it's the Philly Stars.
Okay.
Although I also debate, because I like Luis Perez. From that 1 week, he looked amazing. Like, I really like him, and I like their quarterback situation. And I think they're going to win a lot of games because of that quarterback situation. But there's something about the Philly Stars that I just like. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess you don't have to make a final decision going into just week 2, so we have a lot of football still to play. But for me, it's between Birmingham and Houston.
Situation. My bad.
Yeah, that's that I can definitely see. Promising stuff for sure. Maybe they'll win a game and then they'll convince you. I think one big offensive showing, and you might be convinced. For me, still between the Stallions and the Gamblers. More to be revealed because they're playing against each other this week, so I'm gonna be closely watching that game for sure. So far we agree on everything. One question that I had, because I'm not really in the know about this so much, but is there fantasy football as well for the USFL?
You know, I was looking through. I wanted to see if I could find some DFS. There is a fantasy site, and I don't know that there's an app or a platform that you can do it on. Maybe this is all just written down by hand at this point. But someone mentioned to me that they were on DraftKings. And I thought I had looked through DraftKings for the USFL and didn't see it. But I am pulling up DraftKings right now. And I'm going to see if I can find the USFL on here. If I can get out of this ad that popped up. And I can't for some reason.
If you could, I think that might be a profitable opportunity to play a little bit. There's not a lot of information known on these teams, so if you're an experienced fantasy player, you probably have the upper hand in that situation.
Well, I'm not seeing it listed in the... Yeah,
I imagine it being kind of tough to orchestrate like proper rosters because of how few players there are, right? If you want to have an 8, you can only have an 8-man league, pretty much, max. And then everyone has to have a quarterback, and there's just not a lot of receivers to go around. Yeah. So it might be more like a mini fantasy kind of format where you get one of each position or something.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I would want to play daily rather than season long. For a league this small, but there is a website dedicated to it, and I can give you the name of that website here. I had it pulled up earlier, but I got rid of the window.
We'll look at it later. But maybe if that is something of interest, we can talk about it on the show. If you decide to get into it, I don't know how many people would necessarily play USFL fantasy. It feels like mostly a crapshoot, especially so early on. You really don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah,
with certain players.
Fantrax HQ, fantraxhq.com. Yeah, for anyone that wants to play USFL fantasy.
Experimentally.
Yeah.
I think if the league survives the whole season and goes into a second one, I think that'll become more of a thing. Because then you have a kind of a proven track there.
Yeah, they're suggesting 10-player rosters, 2 QBs. Wow. But six teams in each league. 2 QBs, which that's kind of tough, man.
That is rough.
For a league this small. 2 RBs, 4 WRs, a tight end, and a flex. Wow. Yeah, you're gonna have some backup quarterbacks if you're going with that.
You'll have
route.
players scoring 0 points by default a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Because teams start locking in on a starting quarterback. There's not enough quarterback. There's not 12 quarterbacks to go around every week.
Absolutely.
Same for receivers as well.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, I'd say daily. If you can find a place to play daily, that's the route to go.
Probably the way to do it, especially in a volatile environment. You don't really know how stuff's going to develop, but we'll get more insight going into week 2 anyway. So, wait, what's our score? Did we get all the games right last week, or
4-0? Yes,
4-0. There it is. That's actually a minor miracle. having absolutely no idea about any of this because we didn't even get to see proper training camp. Nope, like a little bit of preseason, but not much of anything.
Couldn't even really go with the chalk because Vegas didn't even know what to set the lines at.
There's nothing going.
Yeah,
that was a minor miracle. We did get it, so hopefully it stays that way. We go 8-0.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe we're just USFL gurus. We'll wait to see.
Yep, not long.
Well, let us know your ideas and your picks for week 2 in the comments. What did you take away from week 1? And do you already have a team that you're tending towards favoring, rooting for? I'm still deciding. Smokey's still deciding. Maybe someone's already got it figured out. Is there anyone at all? Any Pittsburgh Mauler fans? Are you already sick of it? Have you been waiting 40 years to see the Maulers again, and now you've had enough already? Let us know. Maybe they'll turn it around this week. Anything can happen.
Maybe.
We shouldn't make fun of them too quickly, because if they manage to win this one, everything's back to being completely fine. But we will talk about that next week. See how stuff develops. And do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's it for this week.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching the video. Drop us a like, support the scoreboard, and we're going to see you in the next one.
Deuces.